Today we're demonstrating how to do a Bahamian mooring. That means putting one anchor out in each direction that the current will be flowing. So it's always used in an area like this, which is a cut between two islands, in this case, Big Major Spot, Little Major Spot down in the southern Exumas. And the problem here is that with the tides you have current flowing in off the sound and then from the banks back out into the sound again. So with a strong current back and forth, if you put one anchor down, you'll be forcing the anchor to change its direction every tide change, with a potential chance of the anchor pulling out when it doesn't reset correctly. So we're going to find a spot in here, drop one anchor, pull back on it, and then drop the other anchor and then pull back in the middle so that we end up with two anchors holding the boat both from the bow so the boat can swing with the tide or with any strong winds. And that's mainly when I use it. I like the Bahamian Moor, especially if you need to be in a place like this because you've got such good protection, islands all around us here. So that means in a strong wind, in a stormy situation, this is probably a pretty good place to go. If you're using it in a cut, you may find that the bottom is not got always good holding. So sometimes there's just a little bit of sand on top of rock on the bottom, in which case the anchor won't really get a good grip. Now here we are in a spot recommended on the chart as having some holding. It says holding varies. Well, that looks like all good sand to me, but again, that's making your judgment from sitting up here. Now we'll get ourselves turned around, put the anchor down, and try out a Bahamian mooring.
Prevailing winds here in the Bahamas are from the northeast to east to southeast, so most of the nice anchorages are on the western side of the islands. But when a front comes through, called a norther in the islands, you will need to look for protection from the southwest, west, and north as it passes. Here's our spot in between the islands. Northers are very well predicted, and in the winter you should keep an eye out for those protected spots so you'll know where to run if a norther is forecast.
Okay, so we're ready to drop the main anchor. We're coming up into the current.
We motor up into the current to where we drop our main anchor, then back down to set it at our planned 20 meters scope, then drop further back to put out our second anchor, and finally pull back up into the middle.
I'm just checking which way it's moving here.
If wind is very strong, it can affect the boat more than the current, especially now as the tide is slackening. When the wind overpowers the tide, it might be best to anchor into the wind first, then set the second anchor.
Let's put down the main anchor. With 20 meters out on the main anchor, we'll be in about the right place and we can make sure it's going to set.
Once I feel it pull up on the anchor, I'm glancing at the shoreline to the side to make sure that I'm not dragging and that the boat is continuing backwards.
Then with the one anchor set, we'll actually fall back further than we want to go so we can drop the second anchor, which I've got already laid out here. We're going to drop that down and then pull back up in the middle so we don't have to take an anchor out in a dinghy or anything. So there's our 20 meters. So we're at where we want to set it, and it seems to be setting fine. Yikes, that's set. Okay, so now we'll drop back a little more. And then we're getting ready to put down the second anchor here, which is our trusty Fortress. Okay, we got some chain on the Fortress. Get this out. There goes the Fortress away. Such a good anchor, the Fortress. It's nice to deal with because it's so light. Now we just have to pull back up into the middle. We've got the Fortress down there, and we'll be moving back up. Okay, so neutral.
With both anchors down on the bottom, we need to pull back up in the middle, being careful not to catch the line in the prop. I don't make the roads tight, so we can swing out to either side if there are strong gusts. It will reduce the stress on the anchors. Next, make the second rode fast to the bow, or you can attach the second rode to the first one.
Okay, so I've got about a 25-meter piece of rope out now. So this is an anchor rode with 25 meters of line and about 5 meters of chain on the end, connected to our Fortress back here. The problem with this is this would be fine for lunch if we just sort of cleated it off, and if the tide changed, we can just put the line right on here, cleat it off, and if the tide changes, we'll hang on that anchor. When it goes back, we hang on this anchor. But if we want to stay for longer for a storm, if there's a norther coming, then what I like to do is attach it to the anchor rod and the main chain. And the reason for that is right now, if we turn, we're quite likely to catch this rope around our keel and or propeller or whatever, catch around the bow, and then everything gets in a big muddle and the boat could get hung and sort of hanging up on the one of them. So what I like to do is just connect this right so that it'll run down underwater. We're actually going to create a kind of a mooring because the chain will come and then this rod will head off deep down and then it'll never get anywhere near the boat when it swings with the tide. So we can just put it around so it comes up in parallel with the chain and then just shackle it in here. Okay, so we can just shackle through a link. You need to get a proper size shackle for this that will fit through the link of your chain and long enough to go that you can tie a rope onto it. So if you don't need to use one with a loop in like I do. And then fix it off. These have a little detente thing that makes it nice and tight. Now we can just drop So with it set, now we have basically our two anchors are connected to the chain, and we need to put the snubber on like normal. The snubber in our case is this nice little chain hook, which I've always had good luck with. There's always other things you can use, customized things that hold the chain and everything, but I use the hook, and we'll put that on. And drop it down. So we look like we're anchored on our single line, but in fact we have the second anchor down there, so when the tide turns around, it's more of a fuss, obviously. That's taken about 7 or 8 minutes to do instead of just 1.5 minutes to do normally, and it'll be more of a fuss to bring it up too. So we don't do it that often, but it's nice to know you can, and if you really need to in an emergency, I think this is a great way to construct a storm mooring because you've got a really strong setup guaranteed to hold in very strong winds, and if the wind shifts, it won't be pulling your anchor out.
The Bahamian moor means setting 2 anchors off the bow. It's generally used to deal with anchorages in areas with tidal flow, such as cuts in the Bahamas. Set 1 anchor in each direction of the current flow. It's also useful when you're expecting a strong wind shift. Just set a bit more rod so the anchors aren't tightly pulled on the bow. To minimize tangles, you can attach the second rod to your main anchor rod, essentially making a mooring. You can also use the Bahamian mooring method to allow you to anchor with a restricted swinging area, such as in a mooring field. Thanks for watching this Distant Shores how-to segment. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Are you interested in the cruising lifestyle? Are you planning to sail away on a cruising adventure? Or researching cruising areas and destinations? Distant Shores is a television series about the cruising life, with lots of tips for sailors planning to sail away.
This is Oswego, New York. We are entering the Erie Canal system, and this will take us all the way from Lake Ontario to the Hudson River, which gets us to New York City.
Plus destination information to help you make your cruising plans.
Yeah, I can stand on the bottom.
We've been filming Distant Shores for nearly 15 years and know the fun and challenges of the cruising life. We've made Distant Shores with you in mind. We include plenty of cruising tips in this travel series, as well as lifestyle segments and hints for sailors heading to exotic destinations. Encouragement for you and your crew to get out cruising. Destinations include the Intracoastal Waterway, the Bahamas, Caribbean, the Mediterranean, Scandinavia, transatlantic passage making, the French canals, and more.